In the Silver State race, I went back in September and I won the Unlimited class. I got second overall, and I was totally hooked. And I'm like, I've always loved cars, but now I love modifying my car. But with one problem. I mean, so I was engaged, got married, we bought a house, and I look at my bank balance after this whole year of racing. I'm not doing my asbestos abatement business very much. And I said to another racer, it's like, man, I got a lot less money in my bank account today than I did when I started a year ago. He said, you just learned the first rule of car racing. I said, what's that? He said, if you want to make a small fortune in car racing, you start with a large fortune. Like winery business or
exactly.
You're listening to My Supercar World, a Post-Oak Motor Cars production from Houston, Texas.
Hello, everybody. Diane Kaplan here with My Supercar World, along with my co-host, Lonny Souza.
Hi.
Lonny, how was your weekend?
It was good.
Good?
Yeah, lots of honeydews this weekend, as always.
That's all you do is honeydews.
Yeah.
I like it.
I'm a do-it-yourselfer guy.
Can I hire you? Because I need some honeydews around my house, too.
I mean,
what's your going rate?
A beer, right?
Okay, fantastic. Well, we are super excited because another bucket list person to interview has finally made it a part of his schedule and joined us today, living automotive legend John Hennessey.
Don't believe it.
Yeah,
Hi.
welcome, John.
Good to be here with you guys.
We're happy to have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. So, yes, hometown legend. We're in Houston, Texas, as many people know already. And
Sure.
here you are from in our backyard.
Yeah,
I mean,
love it.
just, gosh, I can't wait to get started. There's so
Did you
many
guys know that
places.
Houston is the home of the street racing capital of the world?
Is it
Unofficially,
really?
yes, it is.
Unofficially.
Now, like street racing is something that obviously is highly illegal and people should not be doing. People should not be doing. But back in the day, it was like Fight Club. If you knew about it, you knew about it. If you didn't know about it, you didn't know about it. But yeah, there's a big drag racing event a friend of mine started years ago called TX2K.
Okay.
Peter Block, he now lives in Dallas, and so he now has the event up at the drag strip up near Dallas. But even before that event became a thing back in the late '90s, me and Peter would just go out to like the Beltway when it was empty or wherever. And so, but Houston had like among people that kind of are in that world of really fast street cars. Yeah, Houston's kind of officially known around the world as the street racing capital of the world.
I did not know
Yes,
that.
yes. So.
We always called, like, when the Beltway first opened, it was like our Autobahn.
Oh, and now it's the Grand Parkway or I-10. Just like we live not too far from I-10, and just in the middle of the night, you can just hear all night long. But anyway, keep it safe out there, street racers. Yes.
No kidding.
Yes.
That is good information to know.
Yeah.
I know.
we
I
see-
need to go find some of these, though.
Yeah, we see some of these local social media
Sure,
accounts with
sure.
all kinds of stuff
Right.
where they're spinning out. And I didn't see any drag racing,
those guys all need to go to jail because that's just senseless. But going out and having a little bit of fun and doing it in a safe way. And there's events where you can go to drag strips and go to closed runways and stuff like that. But
There used to be one in Beaumont, didn't there? Or not Beaumont.
well, Baytown,
Baytown.
Houston Raceway Park. They closed a few years ago. We have a drag strip. We operated it for a number of years, but it just with the weather, it's just kind of hard to predict. And our main business is modifying and building vehicles, and so it just didn't fit our business model. But yeah, there's places where you can go have fun with your cars. But these deals where they're out there and they're just doing donuts and running over people, that's just like that's crazy. There's just unnecessary and stupid, in my opinion. But
Well, okay, so we'll do a side note, send us a little text. The next time
exactly.
I think we'd love to go to one.
Yeah,
of those.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
God, that would be
Yeah,
awesome.
well, you come out to our place, and we have our drag strip, so we can have just fun and do it safely and legally and the whole thing. So yeah, we can go. F5 will hit about 180 out there, so it goes pretty quick.
Well, we happen to have some Hennessey Tahoe.
Yes, we do.
Can
Let's
we
talk
run
about
those?
that. Absolutely.
We could do a Tahoe versus Suburban drag race.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, before we get into that, you
Sure.
got to tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean,
Sure.
we need some history and
Sure. So I moved to Houston back in the early '80s and was just always into cars and going fast and didn't have any money and always been entrepreneurial. So I had a small construction business. We were doing environmental cleanup work. Wasn't married yet. Made a little bit of money. Decided I wanted to go racing. A friend of mine who just passed away about 6 months ago ended up becoming the editor at Motor Trend. His name was C. Van Toon. But before he became the editor, he was a writer. And I read an article in Motor Trend where he bought an Eagle Talon, he put a roll cage in it, and he took it to Pikes Peak, and he raced up Pikes Peak in 1990.
Oh my God.
And so I read that, and I thought, man, if that guy can do that, and I didn't know him at the time, I thought maybe I could do the same thing. So I wanted to find a car that I could modify. So in 1991, I bought a 3000 GT VR4, which was all-wheel drive, twin turbo V6. Like one of my dream cars back in the 80s was the Porsche 959, very high tech, 911. And so I wanted to build kind of my own poor man's version of the 959. So I started modifying it with the intention of going to Pikes Peak, and ended up getting, I don't know, at the time there weren't any dynos, so I thought it was maybe about 400 horsepower. And I read about a race in Nevada called the Silver State Classic Race. They have two races. They have one in May, they have one in September. And they run 90 miles as fast as you can go. And I just showed up, and I'm like, I don't know how fast I can drive, I don't know how fast my car will go, but I'm going to give it a go. And so I did 90 miles in 34 minutes. My average speed was 164 miles an hour to go 90 miles on a public highway that was closed. And I was totally hooked. And so after that year, I went to Pikes Peak. I didn't win anything, but didn't crash. I went to Bonneville, the Bonneville Salt Flats, set a speed record there. Not crazy fast, 177, but at the time I thought that was pretty good. And then and then in the Silver State race, I went back in September and I won the Unlimited class. I got second overall, and I was totally hooked. And I'm like, I've always loved cars, but now I love modifying my car. But with one problem. I mean, so I was engaged, got married, we bought a house, and I look at my bank balance after this whole year of racing. I'm not doing my asbestos abatement business very much. And I said to another racer, it's like, man, I got a lot less money in my bank account today than I did when I started a year ago. He said, you just learned the first rule of car racing. I said, what's that? So if you want to make a small fortune in car racing, you start with a large fortune, like winery business or
Exactly.
Boating, fishing business,
Right,
whatever
boating.
hobby business there is. And so as I was doing all that stuff, my bank balance is going like this. And I thought, okay, look, I really love cars. I think I'm pretty good at modifying them. Maybe a decent racer. Maybe somebody else would pay me to modify their cars, like they did with Carroll Shelby, Alois Roof, Reeves Callaway with Corvettes. And I thought, maybe if those guys did, maybe I can too. So I told my wife, we literally just came back from the honeymoon. We're like 2 weeks back from the
How old
honeymoon.
are you then?
I am 20, just before my 29th birthday. I was 28.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
And so she's like, you want to do what? So her dad was a small town Dodge dealer, car dealer in Louisiana. And so she grew up around the car business. She's like, okay, if you want to do that. I mean, and so we started in 1991, and as a friend of mine says, now here we are. Actually, I heard Jeff Hildebrand say this: we're a 34-year overnight success story.
Right.
Yeah, so 34-year overnight success story. So here we are, 34 years later, and we have 120 employees, and we'll modify about 800 vehicles this year. We build our own hypercar, the Venom F5, and we have a trade school where we teach people how to modify cars called Tuner School, which a lot of our employees come out of. And so it's been a journey to get to that point, but that's kind of the starting point and the ending points. And then in between is a lot of, life coming at you.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I've been in the business since, 94 now, so
Okay.
not too far. And I've heard your name from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I
Right.
grew up in Sugar Land and lived in Houston my whole life.
Okay.
And so now is your name Hennessey, like Tom Cruise? That's not his actual last name, but it's so cool. And your name?
Oh no, it's what I was born
What
with.
a cool
It's a good
name,
one.
man.
I mean, yeah,
It's
thankfully.
like not your stage name.
Yeah, no, not my stage name. Didn't make it up, and so no, been very fortunate, and just so early on, a good friend of mine, he just retired from General Motors, a guy named Joe Jacuzzi, whose dad invented the hot tub. So speaking of brand names,
No.
Joe and I became very close friends early on. He was working in the communications department at Mitsubishi when I went to Bonneville, and so he came there with C. Van Toon, the guy that went up Pikes Peak. And Van was there to write an article for their dealer magazine about this crazy guy from Texas that drove his car to Bonneville that thinks he can set a record. And so Joe early on said, hey, John, look, if you'll come down to the Southern California area after Bonneville, I'll take you around and introduce you to the editors at Road and Track, Motor Trend, some of the guys at Car and Driver. And if they like you and they like your car and they drive your car and they write something nice about it, your phone will ring and people will want to buy your stuff. I'm like, well, anyway, I was a big kind of a car magazine geek growing up. When my mom would go to the grocery store, I don't like to shop today, and I don't like to shop then, but didn't have any money to buy a car magazine, but I would go and just read car magazines while she was shopping. And so I just, grew up reading car magazines. I'm like, I just love these guys. So this is all pre-social media, before YouTube, before the internet. That's all we had. If you wanted to study anything about cars, it was those magazines or Auto Week or whatever. And so I was just kind of enamored, went and met these guys, developed relationships with them, would give them, they would call me from time to time. and just realized that like, well, wow, golly, after doing that for 5 or 10 years, we'd been on the covers of dozens of magazines, all the top magazines, Top Gear in the UK. And I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years into the business, I thought, are we becoming a brand? If we are, then maybe we should like manage our brand and name our cars cool names and trademark them. And so we've done a good job of doing that. And then obviously when social media and YouTube and all that stuff come along, we want to try to keep all of kind of the, not everybody gets to come to our factory and go fast in one of our cars. So if there's a way we can share the excitement with other
Behind
people,
the scenes.
we want to do that. So we got a great little marketing team that is grinding that out every day, sharing what we do. And so it's been fun. I mean, I'm no different than any other car person. I've been just very blessed to get to make it my living for the last 34 years and raise a family by doing that. So it's been fun.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's been good stuff.
Okay, so I hear your stories with tuning up cars for racing.
Yeah.
When did you get into tuning up cars for like the average Joe, right? The big stuff that we see today.
It started with the average Joe from the absolute beginning.
Okay.
So when we started in late '91, I'm like, well, I know how to modify a Mitsubishi 3000 GT, which was the same car as the Dodge Stealth at the time.
Yeah.
And so, but I knew enough to work on cars to where I did work on my own car. But for more advanced stuff, I would go to a professional mechanic. And I thought, you know what? This isn't going to go. I'm not going to be able to scale very much doing it on my own. So I went and found the best mechanic that I could find that was available at the time that had the best tools. And I went and rented a little warehouse. There's a little bowling alley off of 34th Street, 290. I don't know if the bowling alley is still there, but anyway, this old building that it had just caught on fire not too long. Right. All the insulation was burned off, and just this metal shed, and that's where we started. And when we put our shingle out, there was a magazine back in those days called Turbo Magazine, which was kind of a big, kind of like a hot rod magazine for Japanese cars. And so I put a little ad in there, and then I had kind of the notoriety from doing some of these races and had a few write-ups from a few different magazines, and our phone would just ring. And I was just like, okay, well, I was the salesman, and I had one mechanic, and that was it. And I think back in those days, we didn't have any kids yet, so my wife had a pretty good job. I could generally cover the house payment, but sometimes she'd have to cover the house payment. And in reality, the reality back in those days was like, I was just trying to make enough money where I go to my next race. And I think in those days, the bank balance never really went much above 15 grand, and I tried not to let it drop much below 5. And so continue to do these races, continue to kind of meet people in the kind of the automotive car magazine world, and they would write stuff about us. And then one day a guy from Dallas called up, and he had an early Dodge Viper, which was a 92, but they didn't come out until like the spring of 93. They were kind of about a year late. And he said, hey, I want to do that Silver State race. Can you help me? And I said, sure. And I said, by the way, I can set up your car so you can run in the class that you want. But I said, if you'll let me modify your car, I will modify it for free. And the only thing I'm looking for in return is after the race, I want to take it to California and hand it over to some of these Motor Trend car and driver guys. He said, fine. So we did that. And articles started coming out a few months later. And sure enough, Jay Leno called us up. He's like, hey, it's Jay Leno. Can I get an exhaust for my car? And so the Viper was really kind of the cool car back in those days that we modified, that really kind of helped build our brand. And we would go, we started at, I don't know, 500 horsepower, the Venom 500, and then eventually 1,000, 1,200 horsepower. And, we were 1,000 horsepower back about the time that the Veyron was 1,000 horsepower. And we actually did a road and track shootout. It's about 20 something years ago, where they wanted to see which car could go from 0 to 200 miles an hour in the shortest amount of time. And I think we beat the Veyron by like 4 seconds or something like that. Wow. And so, and look, I mean, the Veyron is, again, that's a luxury car. I mean, ours is a hot rod, sports car, muscle car. And, but that's kind of how we built our name. So kind of, we did that, year in, year out, we're modifying, I don't know, probably 40 to 80 vehicles a year, 3-4 vehicles a month on a slow month, and busy month 6, 7, 8. But then when we bought the little racetrack out in Sealy, Lone Star Motorsports Park, we bought that about 20 years ago. Built our first building, which was 24,000 square feet. Moved in there at about 2008. And then I'm like, we've got 5 kids by this time. I'm like, well, this is no hobby business. This is a hobby business a long time ago. I got to make money. These kids got to eat, and I got to put them through school. And so that's when we started kind of expanding out to, I think the real first like mainstream non-sports car, crazy horsepower, let's go really fast car was a local guy named Gaston Kirby. He was an oil and gas guy. Called us up in like 2008. He had one of the first Ford Raptor trucks. Had a 6.2 liter V8 truck. Yeah. So it was a 2009, but they came out in '08. And the call came in. I didn't take the call, but I called the guy up. I'm like, well, what do you want to do to your Raptor? Like, well, I don't know. He's like, what can you do? I said, well, I don't know. But I said, send it to me. I said, send it to me for a week or two. Let us look at it. I said, the architecture of the modular 5.4 liter V8, I said, there's nothing specific for that, but we've modified those. So it can be modified. It was not that different than the Ford GT that they built back kind of a few years before that. And so I looked at it, said to my guys, I'm like, hey, could we put turbos on it? Could we twin turbo it? So we did, and I told Gas and gave him a price. I said, sure, go for it. And I don't know, a couple months later, we put it on our dyno, and it's making like 600 horsepower at the wheels, which for a pickup truck is a lot, and sounding pretty rowdy. Like a few days later, we get a phone call from the producers of Top Gear USA, Top Gear America. And Top Gear was a huge deal back in the UK and BBC at that time. And they said, hey, can we get that truck we want to race your truck against like a high altitude Halo skydiver in the desert. And I said, well, I'm not going to let you race my customer's truck, but I will go buy a truck. So we bought a truck, modified it, went out to the desert, and of course, Top Gear, they're going to do everything they can to destroy it. So, it's got cactus needles in all the tires, the windshield was cracked, the exhaust was smashed. And my guys are like, boss, that costs us like 20, 30 grand, like for them just to wear it up. I'm like, it's Top Gear. Just let's wait and see that the show comes out on TV. And so it comes out on History Channel. And within the first hour, we had over 100 inquiries with people were like, can you modify my Raptor? Can I get a Velociraptor like that? And so since that time, so again, that's like 15 years ago, a little more than that, we've modified 7,000, 8,000 Raptors since then. Oh yeah. I mean, so again, this year we'll modify 800 to 850 vehicles. 80% of those are trucks. Majority Raptor Rs. We built a Raptor R with our Velociraptor 1000 upgrade package for Joe Rogan and delivered that to him about a year ago. Wow. He talks about it on his podcast every now and then. I think last month we built 34 Raptor Rs with 1,000 horsepower. And so anyway, so trucks are huge for us, and now we have bailment agreements with General Motors, with Ford and Stellantis, and so now, like in the case of Fertitta Chevrolet, Chevy gave us an allocation for Tahoes and Suburbans and Silverados this year, and that's going to be growing. And now we're able to have the vehicles come from the factory to our property, straight into our manufacturing, and it all stays within the manufacturer's floor plan. So if Fertitta Chevrolet says, hey, look, we'll take 10 of those, it just transfers on the floor plan, right? And so, and then when it's done, we send it to the dealership, they pay us, and they sell the vehicle. And so I think next year we're getting ready to build another, so we have about 52,000 square feet of manufacturing space currently. We're getting ready to add another 50,000 square feet. They're going to start breaking ground in the next few days. We'll have the capacity, I don't know if we'll hit it next year, but we'll have the capability of building 2,000 vehicles in a year. Now, we're starting talking about Porsche builds 10,000 911s in a year. So now we're kind of, we're not at that volume yet, but we're a manufacturer. We're our manufacturer own right. Very small volume, very boutique. And I'm thankful that individuals around the country, around the world want to buy a modified SUV or pickup truck for $120,000 to $220,000. That's our bread and butter.
Wow.
That's where we made the money. Like, we spent a gajillion dollars on the Venom F5 program. That's a whole another long story. Right. But I can say with a straight face, I didn't risk the family farm. I just basically took the money we made off of modifying Raptors and reinvested in building our own car,
right?
To the tune of 8 figures. But it's still, but that's what that's done for our business, and it's really grown our business. And the cool thing is that, again, the practicality of an SUV. So, our H600, 625 horsepower Tahoe or Suburban. You can put baby seats in it, and you can put golf clubs in the back, and you can go on a road trip to the beach, but it's fun. Yeah. It's got cooler wheels, and it's lowered a little bit, and it's got a power where, it gets to the speed limit at 112 really quick.
Yeah.
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 So,
I don't know if you know, I know that Blake is driving one.
Absolutely.
He went from a Cayenne Turbo GT to this Tahoe.
It sounds great.
He loves it. And it's exactly for that reason. He's got a car seat.
Absolutely.
He's a family vehicle, but he didn't want to lose the performance of
Right,
driving a vehicle, right? Just because he's a bigger one.
Yeah. So it's very exciting. I got a little scoop for you guys. Something we have not announced publicly, but I'll break the news here today on your podcast. So we do a lot of R&D, so we're always constantly what's coming next. We're always looking down the road, and so again, because we've had so much success with our modified Suburbans and Tahoes, we're going to be coming out with a special edition of the Silverado truck for 2026 with over 700 horsepower.
Oh, wow.
So kind of right there, kind of in the realm of Raptor R. Raptor R will probably be a little bit more powerful, but
Lonnie's
again,
gonna have a new
we
demo.
find some Chevy guys that are not buying a Ford, and Ford guys that are
Right.
not buying a Chevy.
Right.
So again, we do business with both companies and have great relationships with both manufacturers. But I think that's something that'll be very popular for Tita Chevrolet.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
She's right. I just
Yes.
bought. I try not to drive demos and,
Yeah.
and recycle them back in, so I buy
Sure.
my company vehicles.
Uh-huh.
And I bought a 3/4 ton crew cab diesel.
Love it.
Lifted it up. but
Absolutely. That's
I'm gonna
coming.
have to put this one- I'm gonna have to have a replacement
That's
vehicle.
well. Again, there's again depends on what you're wanting to do. For people that like diesel, pull a trailer,
Yeah.
they're immensely powerful.
Yeah.
We will be also offering some things for the 2500 series and larger 1-ton trucks.
Okay.
That'll be coming next year as well.
What about Corvettes?
Corvette's an interesting one.
Like the base
I
one, like
love
it's-
the C8. I think that's a great car. They've been complicated to modify, which, if my Chevy friends were here at the table, I busted their chops about this. I'm like, guys, it's easier to modify a Lamborghini or a Porsche, way easier than it is to modify a Corvette. Now, the big dog that's out now is the ZR1, right? So 1,000 horsepower from the factory.
Yeah.
I think that because it has turbos on it, that one's going to be easier to modify than a C8. So again, you're starting with 175 to 200,000 vehicle,
Right.
but I think we'll be able to squeeze another 100 to 200 horsepower out of that pretty easily, and we may be doing some R&D on that soon. So no big announcements yet, but I think to answer your question, if somebody wants to modify a C8 Corvette, get the 01 and let's give it some more get up and go.
No,
That's
I
my.
mean, and that car, even as of this morning, it's still breaking records.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah. I mean, for the money. I mean, for the money to have 1,000 horsepower with a factory warranty, with a trunk, that's comfortable. Convertible, target top, high downforce, touring car. For that kind of money, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I mean, so again, performance wise, it's on par with. It's maybe a tiny bit faster than like a 296 Ferrari or 750S or 765 McLaren, but those cars are like $400,000 or $500,000. This is if you go to the Chevy's website and you go to the configurator for the ZR1 and you make it the most expensive, it's like $238,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, everybody's going to have one. Everybody's going to want one. But
Yeah.
when you're driving it and you're having fun, who cares if somebody else has one?
Right.
I got a bunch of Porsches. I don't care if everybody has a Porsche. As long as I'm driving a Porsche, I
Right.
like driving my Porsches. And I'll like driving my ZR1 whenever I get one of those, and I'll modify it a fair amount because for the money, I'll just wear that thing out. Whether I take a Dakota, whether I'm just driving it for fun.
Great track car.
Like we have the
rally car.
F5. I have two F5s, but again, that's a $2 to $3.5 million car. So I'm like, I can just go run over, drive, y'all been to Houston a while.
Right.
You drive down the road in Houston long enough, somebody's moving, there's a mattress, and there's always crap in the roads. So like I'm a lot more cautious when I drive my more valuable or expensive cars.
Yeah.
But something like, I drove here in a Tesla today. I'm getting ready to unload that thing. But like I drive it because if I run over a pallet rack in the middle of I-10, I don't give a crap.
That's
Right.
why I drive a truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we all kind of like drive like literally road warriors in Houston
Yeah.
with your good stuff.
I've got
your
a Grenadier.
Yeah,
Love
when
the
you have
same
your when
thing.
you have your expensive like your specialty old like my old cars. I'm like I had a lady run into I have a CTSV wagon with a manual. I was pulling out of River Oaks districts about a year ago, and just some lady didn't see me, ran into me, and I just had to get paint work and body work done on one of my collectible cars. So, but anyway, back to ZR1. What a great bang for the buck.
Yeah.
You can drive it and wear it out, and it's a lot of money, but it's not like I'm gonna like if one of my old cars got hurt, it's like one of my kids, right?
I mean, I have a list as long as my arm for that car,
Yeah.
and the majority of them are all of our collectors.
Yes.
Absolutely.
They all have
Absolutely.
Lamborghinis and Ferraris
Absolutely.
and Rolls and then they
That's
want
the
that
one to get.
car
That's
for
the
the
one to
same
get.
reason you just said.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a-
and look, for an American brand to build 1,000 horsepower with a warranty.
Yeah.
And look, those guys, and I know the Chevy guys, the chief engineer on Corvette is a guy named Tony Roma. Tony's helped us on some projects in the past, and he's very close with the engineer that's done a lot of work for us, a guy named John Hennessey, who was a very high-level performance engineer at GM for 38 years. And so, again, I can't say enough great things about Chevy and Mark Royce and Tony and their whole team. to do that. Now they'll come out. The rumor is Zora, which is the next car
Yes.
with the
Already got a list of people wanting
with
that,
all-wheel
too.
drive. Now the only downside of these cars, they're starting to get heavy. They're heavy cars.
Right.
But hey, I'm old school. I still like lightweight and power. But it's really cool to see that they want to compete on the world stage, whether it's at Le Mans, whether it's at 24 Hours of Daytona, now F1, right?
Yeah.
With Cadillac.
Cadillac,
That's their own deal. They're going to be doing their own engine. So
Can't wait.
I think as Americans, I think that's kind of maybe what ties back to the desirability of our brand and our product. Made in America, baby.
Exactly.
It's the golden age of America, and you can kind of debate in the short term, the tariff thing has not made my business any easier, nor anybody else's. But I think in the long run, without getting too far into politics, I think it's probably better for America, probably better for the world. And look, we are really going to lean into the fact that what we build out in Sealy, Texas, is all built here in America.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's very
Speaking
important.
of being built and Sealy, so I was going to ask that question. Are you manufacturing your own parts for these?
So we have a global
Performance
supply chain. So right now, currently, most of the carbon fiber comes out of the UK.
Okay.
So, but our carbon fiber supplier, we've been talking to them for the last couple of years, having a strategy where if the exchange rate goes the wrong way, to be able to do the manufacturing at our property in Sealy. So
fantastic.
the 50,000 square feet that we're getting ready to add, that's primarily dedicated for growing our Delment vehicles for GM and Stellantis. But we're going to leave some of that space available for paint and composite work. Now, I'm willing to add another 50,000 square feet to eventually do that. But it's a big investment. And it's not just investment in equipment, but I think why a lot of U.S. companies, have to go outside the U.S. to source headlights or different parts is because we've lost so much manufacturing capability, not just last year, not even 5 years ago, over the last 40 years.
Right.
So it's going to take time to try to bring some of that back here. So I hope as manufacturers, we don't get punished if we source some things from China or some things from the UK or some things from Italy. It's still built here. It's still designed here. We would buy as many of the components from here as we can. And I would say like in the Venom F5, probably right now, currently 60% comes from outside the U.S., 40% from inside the U.S. I think as we're about halfway through the 99 car production run for F5, I would love to see the last cars where it's maybe like 70, 80% built in the U.S. And then the next car that comes after F5, then maybe 80, 90% from the U.S. But we're always going to live in a global supply chain.
But
you know?
we've got to work up to it. Like
Yeah,
you
we have
said.
to work up
Can't
to
do
it.
it overnight.
You know,
That too, and we can't snap our fingers
Right.
and train the labor.
that's right. And
You
look,
gotta have
everything
the
has to be built to a
skilled
budget.
labor,
It has to be
right.
built to a timeline. And so, like if all of a sudden you said, "Hey, look, I have to acquire a certain part of the car and it has to be in the U.S." Well, if that part is 4 times as expensive, now I can't compete. Now what am I supposed to do, right? So, I really like the idea of let free markets sort it out. But at the same time, if America's getting ripped off, I don't want us to get ripped off either. And I also want to make sure that we're safe and we're strong and we're not stupid and we're not doing things and giving away industries or technologies or manufacturing capabilities when we need those things for our own national security.
Agree.
So
couldn't agree
anyway,
more. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I have a question. So, speed has changed a lot.
yeah.
How do you see how speed's changed? Are we getting to
great
that
question.
point where is it too much?
Well, I think what you're talking about is with electrification. Again, I'm on my second Tesla Plaid. I can debate the reasons why I've driven it and the things I don't like about it. But one thing's clear about that car is it delivers an insane amount of speed. I sold my last Tesla Plaid for like $58,000 because it had 30,000 miles on it or whatever. Somebody could literally go buy it, and those cars will run a low 9-second quarter mile. Literally in Plaid mode to launch that thing, it will make you dizzy.
Yeah.
But what I think the electric car doesn't do, so it delivers G-forces, and it's like an appliance for transportation. Like it's a phone, it's a washing machine. It does a job. It doesn't have the emotion. Okay, so I have way more emotion in my 1969 Olds 442 that on its best day might run a 14.5 in the quarter mile. Okay, whereas my Plaid would be 50 car lengths ahead of it at the end of the quarter mile. I get more enjoyment and more emotion out of driving my 442 because it has the sound, it has the vibration, it has the smell, it has the full sensory input. Now, like F5 is faster than the Plaid in every category, maybe except for 0 to 60, but everything beyond 60 it will destroy a Plaid. But boy, golly, the sound, the vibration, the feeling, oh my gosh, it's like, this is like, how can I get more of this? It's just, it's addictive. And so I think to your point that, you know, anybody can go out and spend $30,000 to $50,000 and have an electric car that will 0 to 60 any non-electric car all day long. Okay. But beyond that, I think that if you look at kind of how the Resto Mod, the Retro Mod, Singer Porsches, and there's, you know, literally hundreds of companies around the world. Like you pick whatever kind of cool car there was back in the day. There's some specialty company somewhere that like will take that car and make it modern and cool and all that kind of stuff. And why is that? It's because
Searching for it.
Because it's not just about like that initial G-force that you get when you launch an electric car, but it's like, what's the overall experience? Some people want to go drive in the hill country. Some people want to go to Circuit of the Americas and run around a road course. You know, I like just having fun, kind of driving on the street and driving around town or driving out back and forth through the office. And I just, again, I use my Tesla because it's kind of a cheap, like I just call it a beater just because that's just like, if I run over a pallet rack, I'm not worried about it, and it's fast and it gets me where I want to go. But there's no real sense of enjoyment. Right. You know?
I agree. It's an emotional, driving's an experience. I mean, remember the old days, I mean, you had driving gloves, you were ready for it.
Yeah. I'll give you, sorry to interrupt, but I'll give you another, just an example that I just thought of. If you go skiing, if you get in the gondola and you ride the gondola down the hill, that's the Tesla. Right. If you strap your skis on and you go over to your kids talk like mine do, will talk you into going down the double black. And it's kind of, you're right on the edge of like, you know, yard sale and ending up in the emergency room. But then you end up at the bottom of the hill, you know, 30 minutes longer than it took to ride down the gondola. But you feel like you accomplished and you experienced something. That's right. That's the difference to me.
That's a well put. I don't need to add to it because that's a great description.
Yeah.
But I mean, so somewhere like Bentley, they decided, okay, we're going to hold off on full electrification, but let's incorporate some of that technology to help, you know, so like similar to the SF90 or the new GT, they use a little bit. Would you ever consider something like that?
You know, for us, like if you look at, so you're talking about hybrids. So if you look at the earliest hybrids that were used for performance, that would be the Holy Trinity. So McLaren P1, Porsche 918, LaFerrari. I have clients that have all these cars. And the P1s have a lot of issues with their hybrid system. I think 918 is fine. LaFerrari, if you forget to plug it in, that battery will cost you $100,000. We're a small company. I mean, I like things that are simple. Like even like I like a lot of Apple's designs because they're simple. Now, simple's not easy to do. We work really hard to make things simple. But I think the moment that we try to do hybridization, we don't have the same kind of resources like Ferrari. So I would rather have a car that's cooler and better than faster than Ferrari and just do it with internal combustion, which is exactly what we do. I have no problem with a hybrid. I think they're great. But for me to own one, especially if it's out of warranty, I don't want to have to write a check for $100,000 every couple of years because the battery takes a dump or whatever. So I think that, again, the case of Bentley and other brands, you know, they're able to leverage those technologies because Bentley's part of Volkswagen Group, and Volkswagen Group has immense resources, right? So the likeliness that something coming from Bentley, you know, would probably be great. And look, the Europeans, I really feel sorry for the product planners and the decisions of all OEMs because they're trying to make decisions on product. You got the EU over here. They're like, a few weeks ago, the EU was going, we think we should ban carbon fiber. Right. Okay, well, that's a brilliant idea. The thing that makes things lighter and more efficient. Anyway, they came off of that. So they're trying to plan product for the next 5 or 10 years, and you got stuff like that. Well, then over here, you got one president says, well, you know, in 5 years, we're going to all be electric. And then the next guy comes in like now, is like, I'm going to let the market decide, and we're not going to give unfair advantages to electric just because certain people want that to be the case. I'm a free market guy, you know. But again, I guess I have some empathy for the planners, and when I'd like to throw rocks and say, why did you do that? Well, they can't just, like, I'm small volume, I've got a lot more autonomy, and me and my wife own the business. We pretty much get to decide what we want, and we ultimately are listening to what do our customers want. Right. What does our customer want? That's like I think when the manufacturer, look at Stellantis, the moment they stop listening to the customer, off the cliff. Right. You know,
all the big engines.
They did, and they're like, we're a mobility company, and everybody's going to drive electric. You know, Tavares, they got rid of him because, like, nobody's buying their stuff. And then Tim Kuniskis, who was head of Dodge and head of Ram, was a friend of mine. And we're actually, he told me he was going to retire before he retired, and I was trying to hire Tim, and we were trying to work on that. And then he ends up going back. He's back at Ram now. Well, that's good because they brought him back because he knew that at least for a period of time, the Hemi and the Hellcat, people want that. Okay. Now, if at some point in time, next generations are like, hey, we want electric or we want to ride bicycles or whatever, then the market is what the market is. But I think, honestly, I'm 62. I think for the rest of my lifetime, we're still going to have a predominance of internal combustion. And this is the guy that drove an electric car here today. But internal combustion, that's what our customers tell us that they want for a variety of reasons. My wife will never buy an electric car. She hates riding in my Tesla.
Again, it's not me either. I think that, obviously I think everybody will agree electric is in the future at some point in time, whether it's in our lifetime or not.
Yeah.
And it will be perfected as we progress.
Sure.
And I think all the brands are going to continue to put it out there.
Right.
It just needs to be just another choice of drivetrain.
Yeah.
Right? You've got a 4-cylinder, an 8-cylinder, or an electric. You choose, right?
One thing that a friend of mine told me years ago, kind of in this whole, conversation of ICE versus electric versus hybrid and so forth. He said, look, you can go out and for $40,000 buy brand new with a warranty, full connectivity, get you where you want to go safely all day long with good fuel economy. So therefore, every dollar spent over 40 grand is based on passion. It's based on entertainment. I tell people all the time, I'm in the car business, but I'm really in the entertainment business. Nobody needs nobody needs a Hennessey vehicle just to get where they're going. They really come to us for different reasons. They want performance, they want cool, they want off-road capability, but again, mainly performance and cool factor. So I said, therefore, like the market for cars above $40,000, whether it's Bentley, whether it's Rolls-Royce, whether it's Bugatti, Hennessey, what have you, it's really based upon emotion. Right. And entertainment. And again, there's some people are buying for status, like, some people are buying for people have different reasons, but it ties back to an emotion. Right. And are we able to fulfill that emotion? So if electric does that, I'm open to it. Right. Okay. Right. But, we when we thought that we were going to be kind of forced and cornholed into doing electric cars, I thought, well, maybe we'll consider doing something electric. And when we would talk to our dealers and customers, and like, we don't want electric. We keep doing internal combustion. That's what we want. I started hearing that 4 or 5 years ago, and we completely kind of paused that. It was called Project Deep Space. It was this crazy 22-foot long 6-wheel drive electric thing that was just kind of like out of the box. We like to do crazy stuff. I heard
you say that was in Scottsdale, wasn't it?
Yeah. That's right. That's right. So, but we paused it because we listen to our customers, and so I think that's. Again, I might be wrong, but I think that nostalgia, emotion, the old Boston song, more than a feeling. I think people are buying feelings, whether it's cars, whether it's fashion, whether it's the hotel they want to stay at. They're buying a feeling. If you can sell a feeling and deliver a feeling, you'd be doing well in the marketplace, in my opinion. Yeah,
I totally agree. So where do you see the brand in 10, 20 years? Where do you see?
It's a great question. I think for us, there's always an aspiration for wanting to be the best at whatever we do. So I feel like with F5, performance-wise, again, you'll see here in the near future some performance speed records that we're working on that we want to eclipse other major manufacturers and some amazing things that have been done in the past. But for the overall company, for the overall brand, we always want to be true to who we are. We always want to be authentic. We're Americans. We're Texans. We like doing bold things. We like having fun. And whether we have 10 fans, 10,000 fans, or 10 million fans, I think we just kind of want to connect around those values, those shared values. And whether whether our, least expensive vehicle is, $100,000, $120,000, or if it's, $3 or $4 million, or, if somebody is just like, hey, I like what you guys do, I'm a fan, and they want to buy a hat or a T-shirt. We want to be able to engage with them and just kind of enjoy and share the similar values for, American kickassery and having fun, and so that's kind of who we are today. And that's who I want us to be 10, 15, 50 years from now. So we have 5 kids. All of the kids are in the business and have some capacity, and plus our son-in-law, who's our COO, Alex Royce, and and we just had our first grandchild. So I don't think that we sell or partner with anybody. I think we just keep doing what we do, and if it grows, it grows. If it doesn't grow, that's okay. But I think we stay true to who we are and don't screw it up. That's my job. Don't screw it up. Listen to my employees, listen to our customers and our dealers, and try to deliver not just great vehicles for them, but great experiences. I think people are really looking for. I've had many customers tell me this, but especially our F5 people. They say that they're buying the experience as much as they are the actual car itself. Our first F5 owner told me that. Yeah.
That's funny you say that. We've been together now 8 years here, and when we got back, we had to kind of reinvent this whole ultra luxury selling. What were we going to do? How are we going to grow the business? How are we going to get it out of the mud?
Sure.
And that's exactly what we decided on.
Yeah.
We decided to start selling experiences.
Absolutely.
Versus being transactional.
Absolutely. Well, if you're transactional, you're a commodity. If you're a commodity, you can get that from anywhere.
Right.
And so, okay, I'm buying, gas. Well, I just go to this gas station. Well, I'm not looking for the gas that's 2 cents cheaper. I'm just wherever is it convenient. But all of a sudden, when there's a relationship, when there's a connection, when there's some emotion, we've shared an experience. That's who I want. I want to do. I tell my people all the time. I'm like, if everything's equal, I want to do business. I want to choose the people that I like.
That's right.
Those are the people I want to do business with.
Yeah, and so there's two parts of that. There's leading up to the point of actually taking delivery of a vehicle. So that experience of designing, building, and bespoking, and whatever we do, to the point of taking delivery, and then it's the ownership experience afterwards. How much do you guys get involved with the owners once they take delivery?
It's huge. So again, on our day-to-day, on our modified vehicles, whether they buy directly from us or buy through the dealer, there's a whole engagement process after that. We try to do a couple of events a year. We had something that our marketing team came up with, and we did, it was earlier this year, called the Hennessey Homecoming, where we had, I think we had 60 or 70 customers from around the country all kind of came here, and they weren't just local, they were just from all over the place. We go to other events, Car Week in California in August.
Year before last.
Yeah, and so I think there'll be maybe more opportunities to engage with our clients through our dealers and through kind of our network. As part of this is kind of something cool I can share with you guys that's new. We'll put the news out in a few weeks. So part of the expansion with this new 50,000 square foot facility that we're building, we will have a museum and kind of a visitor center there. And so kind of have cars out of my personal collection, kind of historic cars that the company's built. The car that I showed you earlier, if and when it does something, not just if, but when it does something special. People, again, it would be kind of cool if you're Houston, like when y'all have lived in Houston a long time. So people come here, if not from here, well, what do I do? Well, you go visit NASA, and then the second thing I want you to do is come out and visit. Just come out and take a tour at our place. And I learned that from Pagani. I was in Italy right before COVID. It's the end of 2019, and I had a day to burn, and so I was kind of in that Modena area. And so Pagani is their factory is literally 20 minutes in one direction is Lamborghini, and 20 minutes the other direction is Maranello for Ferrari. So right in the middle. So I went over to take a tour. I paid like 50 euros. I think it's 65 euros and like $70 to take a tour. And it was a very nice tour. And I said to the lady behind the counter, I said, how many people took the tour in 2019? She said 18,000 people, 20,000 people took the tour. And I'm like, whoa, that's real money. And they have this whole merch shop. So again, I think for us, it's a way to engage. Yeah, we want to make money, but if someone wants to come and buy a t-shirt or jacket or a hat, great. Take a tour, see what we do. We stopped doing tours during COVID because it was just too complicated. And we've not resumed it because our business has grown so much and we've been out of space. And you come out to our place and it looks like it's a beehive of activity. I mean, we last month was a record. We built 105 vehicles in the month of May. Yeah, a couple days ago. So with that going on, 120 people run around giving tours. We're not really set up for that. But I think when the building will be built later this year, we'll make an announcement on social media when we're going to begin doing tours. But it'll be next year sometime. But again, I think it's a nice way for people to engage and be able to kind of come see what we do. And I think what's cool about that is, like, when I was a kid, like, when I was little, when I was in the 60s, I'm like, I want to be an astronaut because these, Apollo guys are going to the moon. And then I wanted to become a fighter pilot. And so I didn't end up doing that and modifying cars, but I think that we can kind of positively pay forward what we do by inspiring the current and future generations. Maybe they think modifying a car, racing a car, doing something in the car world is cool, and maybe they do that, or maybe they do something different, but it's something positive that they can kind of catch hold of and kind of keeps them marching in the right direction, listening to their parents, staying off of drugs, and staying focused at school.
Right.
You know, so I think there's a kind of a little bit of a sense of obligation of being able to do that.
I love that.
Yeah, so
We'll have to
see.
do an event out there, Lonnie, once it opens.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
That would be
Yeah.
a cool
When it cool- when it-
experience for our clients.
when it cools off. Before the holiday, the couple weeks before Thanksgiving is a good time of the year.
Welcome to South Texas.
Welcome to South Texas. Yeah.
Right.
So
good.
do you, in your museum, when you pick a new model to modify, do you
Right.
keep a version for it for yourself?
My kids like, Dad, why did you sell that car? I'm like, well, I wanted to build the next car. That was what Carol Shelby would always say. It's like, well, why did you sell that car for so cheap? I'm like, well, I wanted to build the next car. So the answer is there's a handful of cars that we still own the original of. There's some like my Mitsubishi 3000 GT from '91 that I took to Bonneville. When you take a vehicle to Bonneville, it's on salt. That salt will like get inside and corrode the car. That thing probably got crushed 25 years ago, 30 years ago. So, but I bought one that's identical to that. So I think what the museum, I was talking to my wife about this at dinner the other day. What it'll look like is if it's not the exact car, it's close to and then we have some cars that was on the cover of Motor Trend or Road and Track. We have some of those cars too. But if it's not, we'll have something close to it. And I think what we do is that either me or my wife or the kids, there'll be like a little video stand and they'll talk for a minute or two. It's like what this crazy thing did. Like, we took my wife, she has an Audi RS6 Avant, which is a RS6 station wagon, and we tuned it up to 800 horsepower, and we stuck a Christmas tree on the roof, and we ran it like 190 miles an hour down the runway at NASA. We were doing some F5 testing a few years ago. We didn't tell her, and so we have an old Audi Quattro rally car that was kind of one of my inspirations when I was younger, and so we'll have those two side by side, and we'll have kind of the story between those two cars. So again, it's just part of our family story. It's not like you're going into the Penske Museum and there's the car that won Le Mans and there's the car that won the Indy 500 8 times or whatever. We don't have those kind of cars, but we do have some cool stories, good or bad. Yeah, but they're authentically our own. It is our history. Yeah.
Texas history.
Texas history. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
fun.
that. Okay, so tell me, because I know you've got some other things to do today, but tell me if you could borrow one car out of a collection or a museum, anything, no questions asked, what car would that be?
That's a great question. Big collector, friend of mine, two that would come to mind. Bruce Mars got a cool collection out in Beverly Hills. Bruce or Rick Hendrick. Rick Hendrick has a very special F5 we built for him. I'm trying to think right now, what do those guys have? So I know Rick took delivery of, I think, just one of 3 AMG 1s. And my chief engineer, my VP of engineering, was the chief engineer of the AMG 1. So Brian Jones worked for a company called Multimatic. Multimatic did all the engineering for Mercedes on that project. And Brian tells me that the AMG 1 is the car that the harder you drive it, the better it gets. Wow. So I would say, hey, and I think if I did ask Rick, he might let me drive it. But anyway, if I was at Rick's place and he was going to take it out, I'm like, can I drive the 1? Yeah. So anyway,
Probably push the limit on driving that hard.
well, I don't want to, I don't want to bend his $4 million car. But just off the top of my head, as far as maybe something that's like old school, that's retro, like if you watch not Ford versus Ferrari, but the Ferrari movie, and some of the cars. So if you look back, like there's a lot of things like when I watched that movie that just resonated with me and my wife and our family. Kind of the like when you're like an entrepreneur doing what we do, there's some degree of risk. And so like if you look back at some of the classic Ferraris that they were racing back in the 50s at Mille Miglia, Targa Florio, maybe to experience one of those type of cars on those type of roads. I know, they do a rally now, Mille Miglia, and they do that 1,000 miles. But I think to experience that in one of those cars and think about like, what was it like when Sterling Moss was out and he had an average speed of 100 miles an hour on roads that are not much wider than this table, and most of them are gravel roads.
Right.
No seatbelts, no safety,
nothing.
people lined up along the side of the road. I think that would be like that would be kind of a cool thing to kind of experience. But anyway,
That was for true drivers back then.
Yeah, and just reckless abandon. Like at any moment in time, like something could go down, and like we could risk being out of business. And he back then watching the movie, like he's competing with Maserati, and what's Maserati doing, and this and that, and we're kind of the same way. Like Bugatti did this, we're trying to do that, and what's Koenigsegg doing, and it's and we all get along. We like each other. Christian and Mate Remont, who now runs Bugatti. But make no mistake, we all want to beat the shit out of each other too. At least I do. Like when it comes out to the racetrack, like we're friends in the pits or whatever, and I'll buy you a drink or whatever. But like when we're competing, like we want to win.
Yeah, you want to be a friend of. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good, healthy competition.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, and I think ultimately that makes it more entertaining and intriguing for the marketplace and for the fans. And I think ultimately it forces us to build a better product and forces us to get better as a team, better engineers, better business people. So that's fun.
Everybody gets pushed. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. So. I was looking for the next mountain to climb. Yeah.
Well, we can't. So that's what we'll do is we'll have to do this again. And
Good.
I know you got some new stories.
Yeah, we'll hopefully have some new stories to share before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Let's just say.
Yes.
We'd love to. We'd love that. Thank you.
There's a lot of things we need to do together.
Sure.
So I'm excited.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's been a pleasure having
you.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to kind of tell the audience where they can kind of see?
Sure. Hennessey Performance on Instagram, and that's our website for our modified vehicles, and HennessySpecialVehicles.com for the Venom F5, and we have other future product coming there that you'll hear something about in the not too distant future. And then really another cool thing that we really haven't talked about, and we can do it another time, is Tuner School. I mentioned earlier, but that's a trade school that we started about 15 years ago, and we teach people how to modify cars. And I would say typical ages for tuner school students are 18 to 30. But we've had father-sons, we've had retired bankers, we have a lot of military that come through, so we're GI Bill approved, and we have 3 classes per year, so like a normal semester. So our fall class will start in September and go through December and so forth. And we have students literally come to that program from around the world, and more than half of our technicians in our factory have come out of tuner school. So it's a neat thing. I've had many students come to me and say it's changed. Tuner school in some way helped change the direction of their lives. So I think we're pretty proud of that. It's a small part of our business from a revenue standpoint, but a very big part of our culture and for what we do.
So does a student need to have any kind of mechanical background?
No. To go to tuner school, the only requirements are you have to be 18 and you have to have either a high school diploma or a GED. Well, the third requirement is I think we've only flunked out a couple of students, and I think they went there because maybe their parent or they weren't really car people. So you have to be.
You got to be passionate.
You have to be passionate. You have to have an interest in cars. So if you have that, you'll be successful in the car business. Whether it's selling cars, working on cars. Look, there's the automotive industry globally is a huge industry, and as long as you have a passion for automotive, you'll be just fine, no matter what you want to do. But yeah, those are the requirements to come to tuner school. But yeah, we've had students come in there and not even know how to put air in the tire. And graduate, and they put superchargers on cars, know how to strap a car to a dyno. We do a little bit of driving experience stuff on our track, and so they get exposed to a lot of things. They get to learn how to weld and fabricate a little bit. So it's really what's cool about tuner school is they get to self-discover. What am I good at? What am I not good at? What am I interested in? And then once, as a young person especially, I know for me, once I knew what I was really interested in, what I wanted to do, I was off to the races. But I didn't probably get to that point until I was probably in my mid-20s. Will
you be looking to grow that platform? I mean,
we are.
Job placement.
We currently do job placement. We have 2 classes. We have a beginner class and advanced class where they can do tuning. There'll be another expansion of the business. They'll have their own. Tuner School will have its own dedicated, probably 10 to 15,000 square foot facility. Probably a little bit closer to the racetrack because they use the racetrack from time to time. Right now, they're housed in part of our main facility, so they're kind of adjacent to where we're modifying our cars and building the F5s. But they'll have their own space probably next year. So yes, it's growing organically. We're not currently set up for student loans, so everybody has to either, have the money or borrow the money from parents or relatives or have GI Bill. I think once we add a 3rd class, then we will qualify for being able to do student loans. I think that would really, really grow it. Yeah, but it's been very organic. And again, we advertise a little bit, but not that much. It's mostly word of mouth. Yeah.
Interesting. And would you suggest a Chevrolet store that's got your Hennessey product? Do you think, would you suggest that a technician there do tuner school?
Well, the guys, so somebody who's wrenching at, like Fertitta Chevy, something like that, they have experience. So, we could probably do something a little bit more specific for them that wouldn't have to take 14 weeks. And we maybe, as we expand our dealer network, maybe do more like seminars. Like we actually have another thing called Hennessey Academy where people can pay $100 and do video on demand. But it's not quite the same as tuner school. So maybe something kind of in between that for somebody who knows how to pull an engine or how to replace a, AC compressor or pull a transmission, things of that nature, where we can do more specific training for our modifications for our dealer network. That's something we're looking to.
Warranty claims are going to be, some are going to be
right.
through the factory.
That's right.
Be through you.
That's right.
Why send the vehicle back and forth?
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good.
This is good stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank
All right.
you. And
Enjoyed it.
thank you, everybody, for tuning in for another episode of My Supercar World. As always, you can find us however you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify at My Supercar World, or watch us via YouTube at My Supercar World. See you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
My Supercar World is produced by Post Oak Motor Cars, where opulence reigns supreme in the heart of Texas.